the Grouchy Nerd.
Alright, quiet down, knuckleheads. It's time to take another look at an old hero pack for Fantasy Flight Games Marvel Champions. This time we're looking at Doctor Strange. Close. That's Dr. Weird. Stephen Strange was an arrogant, flashy surgeon until he broke both of his hands in a car accident. No longer able to perform surgery, Strange began a search for alternative healing methods, eventually leading him to magic and the Ancient One, a 1,000-year-old mystic that was born in the Himalayas. Which begs the question, which is more racist, that the mysterious ancient mystic was Asian or that he was replaced by a white lady in the movies? It's a question as old as magic itself. The Ancient One was the mystic protector of Earth and also held the title of Sorcerer Supreme, a title given by the universe itself, which has been held by the likes of Merlin, Loki, Isaac Newton, for some reason, and eventually Stephen Strange, who then lost it, but then got it back. A couple of times. Strange trained in the mystic arts, which he eventually mastered, becoming an arrogant, flashy wizard. Improvement? I don't know. He saved reality a few times, so I guess. Since then, he's fought gods and demons and all kinds of things in between. He's been an Avenger, a Defender, a Midnight Sun, and a member of the Illuminati, a secret group of the very most powerful heroes who thought they alone were smart enough to make the big decisions for the whole of the superpowered community. Like all things brimming with hubris, it went really, really well. Let's take a look at him. On his hero's side, Doctor Strange does 2 thwart, 1 attack, and 2 defend. He has 10 hit points, 5 cards in hand, and Avenger and Mystic traits. Spell Mastery says as an action, exhaust Doctor Strange and pay the cost of the top card in the Invocation deck to resolve the special on that ability. So we'll take a look at that Invocation deck here in a second, but just looking at those hero stats, they're not great. I mean, 2 on thwart and defense isn't bad, but that attack kind of sucks, but that's fine because he's not really going to be using it very much. You exhaust him to use the Invocation deck, not for his basic skills. He's kind of like Ms. Marvel that way. On his alter ego side, Stephen Strange drops the Avenger trait but keeps the Mystic one. His recover is only 3 and his hand size goes up the normal 1. And as part of the setup, put the Invocation deck into play and start with the top card face up. He's also got Natural Talent. As an action, discard the top card of the Invocation deck. So there's only 5 cards in this deck. If you are looking for a specific one and you discard the top one to see whatever the next one up is, you've got a 25% chance that the one you want is gonna be the next one. That's pretty good. And even if you don't get the one that you were specifically looking for, you're still gonna get a good card. They're all good. First up is Crimson Bands of Cytorak. Kytorak? It costs 2, plus of course exhausting Doctor Strange, to stun an enemy and do 7 damage to it. Wow, that's big. That is a big and crazy card. 7 damage and a stun for 2 resources and it's not coming out of your hand? That's so good. Also, Cytorak or Kytorak or whatever it is the deity who powers Juggernaut. It has a gem, the gem of Cytorak. I'm gonna go with Cytorak. Images of Icon is next. This one costs 1 to confuse the villain and remove 4 threat from a scheme. I mean, come on, 1 resource for 4 threat and a confuse? Strange doesn't have much of a reason to dip down to alter ego very often, but if you need to, this certainly makes it very safe to do so. Plus, it isn't limited to the main scheme, which is always good to see. Then we've got the 7 Rings of Ragador. Decided this one might be Scottish. Ragador. It costs 1 to give up to 3 characters a tough status. Alright, so I know I jumped to the end of his pack to get those Invocation cards to talk about those early, so we haven't seen his signature ally, Wong, but when he comes into play, you're never going to want to let him leave play. So being able to put a tough status on him is really good, and obviously a tough status on you is always good, but that's 2 free attacks. You can make Wong take 1, get the tough off, and then you take 1, because you don't want Wong to take damage. You must never let harm come to Wong. Or, I guess, get him to like 1 hit point, and then never let harm come to Wong. Next is the Vapors of Valhalla. So clearly, if you want something to sound mystical, you just put in too many consonants, I guess. This one doesn't cost anything. Choose a status card in play and replace that status card with a different status card. So a tough on an enemy becomes a stun. A stun on an ally becomes a tough. Last up is Winds of Watum, another zero coster. Draw 3 cards. Just straight up draw 3 cards. Just draw 3 cards. I mean, yeah, you're limited by your ability to exhaust to play an invocation card, and there might be other invocation cards that you want to play more, whatever. It's drawing 3 cards. It's digging through your deck to find Wong or to find some other amazing card that you need, or just getting 3 more cards in your hand that are resources to pay for something. This lets him afford some pretty expensive cards. So let's dig into the kit and see what some of those cards are that you're going to be trying to find. First up is Wong, Doctor Strange's signature ally. He costs 3 to get out, has 3 health, and does 2 attack and 1 thwart, which you're never gonna use. Because as an action, you can exhaust Wong to either heal 1 damage from your identity, or discard the top card of the invocation deck. And again, this is a very small deck. It's only 5 cards. So between Steven's alter ego ability to mill through that deck and now Wong's ability to mill through that deck, the odds of you getting the specific invocation card that you want to see are really good. I'm not capable of doing the math on that one, but it's really good odds. Then we get 2 copies of Astral Projection, a 2-cost event with spell and thwart traits. Choose a scheme, remove 3 threat from that scheme, look at the top card of the encounter deck, and remove 1 more threat for each boost icon on that card. So by itself, 2 resources for 3 threat is nothing to write home about, but you might be getting 1, 2, 3, or even 4 more off of that, depending on the boost icons you turn over. And that card is probably, unless something else weird happens, is probably going to be the boost card for the villain's activation this turn, so you also know now what that is going to be, and that will help you determine if you need to defend or if you can flip down to alter ego or whatever. Magic Blast is next. We get 2 copies of this one too. It costs 3 for a hero attack action with the spell trait. Deal 5 damage to an enemy and discard the top card of your deck. Then depending on that card's printed resource, you'll do an additional effect. Stun on a physical, deal 2 more damage for an energy, or confuse on a mental. Or stun, deal 2 damage, and confuse if it's a wild. Obviously, very best case scenario is you pull a wild on this one, but if you don't and you do 7 damage or you do 5 damage plus stun or confuse, that's still incredible. 2 copies of Master of the Mystic Arts is next. It's a 1-cost hero action. Play the printed cost of the top card of the invocation deck to resolve its special, but then it stays there. You don't have to discard it, so that means that you can play it with Master of the Mystic Arts, and then you can play it again as Doctor Strange, just exhausting to play it, so you could play one of those cards up to 2 times, maybe even up to 3 times if you get both copies of Master of the Mystic Arts. You could be drawing 9 cards or doing so much damage. How much? Next up is 2 copies of Protective Ward, another 1-cost spell event. This one is a hero interrupt. When a treachery is revealed from the encounter deck, cancel all of its effects and discard it. Always great to be able to get rid of a treachery, especially if it's something like Shadows of the Past or that other one I hate. I can't think of it right now. It's not quite as good as Black Widow's Grappling Hook, which can stay out until you need to use it, and then you get to use it. This one you have to have the treachery while you have this in hand. So you're probably going to get less mileage out of it, but it's still good. Doctor Strange's signature location support only costs 1. Nice to see this guy get a break. The Sanctum Sanctorum. As an alter ego action, you can exhaust the Sanctum to shuffle a spell card into your deck from your discard pile and draw a card. I mostly get annoyed when things are too expensive. This one may be annoying because it's too cheap. I mean, most other heroes' signature location supports cost 2 for the most part. Asgard costs 3. This one costs 1, and it does 2 amazing things. You're not only going to be able to put one of these spells back into your deck, Protective Ward or Astral Projection or Magic Blast, those are all amazing cards to see again. You get to do that, and you get to draw another card. Why is Doctor Strange so good? Next up is the Cloak of Levitation. It's a 2-cost item and artifact upgrade, which gives you the aerial trait. And as a hero action, exhaust Cloak of Levitation to ready Doctor Strange, and then presumably exhaust him again to play the top card of the invocation deck again. Aerial was fine when this came out originally, but since then it's gotten a ton of support. Then we've got 2 copies of another spell card. This one is an upgrade that also has the condition trait. Magical Enhancements. Play under any hero to give it +1 to their thwart, attack, and defend until the end of the round. meaning it'll last through the next villain phase, meaning that your defense will be boosted for the next villain attack, which is the best part of this one for Doctor Strange. If you're playing with people, you can put this on, whatever, Wolverine and make him just a slicing machine. But for you, you're probably going to mostly be using this on your defense. Doesn't make it bad. Doesn't make it bad. Rounding out his kit is one copy of another 2-cost item and artifact upgrade, the Eye of Agamotto. As a hero, exhaust it to generate a wild resource. Sure. Why not? He has everything else. Why shouldn't he have an extra Quinn carrier just for himself? Just a wild with no restrictions. Also, Agamotto was the very first Sorcerer Supreme in the year, and I'm not making this up, this is Marvel canon, in the year 1 million BCE. Before people, there was Agamotto doing magic. The bad stuff. Doctor Strange's obligation is physical toll. Either exhaust as Steven to remove it from the game, or the next event you play costs 3 extra resources, and then just discard physical toll rather than removing it. Remember, those invocations are all events, so that could affect those, making them actually cost right around what they probably should cost if you have to make it cost more than 1 rather than just exhausting to get rid of it. And either way, it lets you flip down to Stephen Strange first, so you do also have the ability to then mill through your invocation deck to see which one you want to play for a little bit more. It's manageable. Baron Mordo is his signature nemesis. He has the elite and mystic traits: 2 attack, 2 scheme, 5 hit points, and when he attacks you, he attacks with magic blast. It's the same thing. He does damage to you, and then you discard a card from your deck and do an extra effect based on the resource there. What a dick. Open the Dark Dimension is his signature side scheme. It only comes in with 3 threat per player, but it also sports an acceleration icon. And when it's revealed, you're going to place the top card of the invocation deck face down under this card. You get it back when the scheme is defeated. I mean, it's not good, but even if it's Images of Icon, which is the thwarty invocation, even if it's that one that gets stuck under there, you still got options. Magical enhancements can get your thwart up to 3. Astral Projection takes off exactly 3. So you've got options. Next is 2 copies of Counter Spell. This one is a spell that attaches to your hero. When you play an event, cancel it and discard it. Then discard this. It's like a stun or a confuse, but specifically for events, which is pretty bad for Doctor Strange. It's not like he can punch his way out of a situation. He's got those weak hands. Thought Casting is the last one. It's a treachery that makes you discard the card in your hand with the highest cost. Then, if you're in Alter Ego, you're going to add threat equal to that cost to the main scheme, or if you're in Hero, you're going to take that much damage. Well, I hate that. Doctor Strange can have a pretty good hand size with the ability to draw 3 cards. He can actually afford to play some pretty expensive cards. So if you have Heimdall or Dum Dum Dugan or somebody in your hand when this hits, that might end the game, when otherwise you would be perfectly safe. That's tough. Moving on to his aspect cards, Doctor Strange's pre-constructed deck used the protection aspect. Up first is Brother Voodoo, aka Jericho Droom. He has Avenger and Mystic traits. He costs 3, has 3 health, 1 attack, and 2 thwart, but that thwart comes at 2 consequential damage. After he enters play, search the top 5 cards of your deck for an event card and add it to your hand, then shuffle your deck. In a 40-card deck, that's looking through a full 1/8 of your hand, but then by the time you get him into play, you've probably gone through at least a few cards, at least even just if it's just your opening hand, you've still gone through. Why did I get so mathy on this one? I don't know what it is, but it's really good. You get to look at a lot of your deck. He was also handpicked by Doctor Strange to take over as Sorcerer Supreme for a time when Steven was too busy. For the universe, Klee is next. She costs just 2 and has the Mystic trait. She does 1 thwart, 1 attack, and has 2 hit points, and when she's defeated, shuffle her into her owner's deck. It's dark. It's real grim, but it's super useful. You can just keep putting her out, have her take some damage, put her back into your deck, and then she's ready to come out again the next time you run into her. You can just keep playing her over and over and over and over. Also, she's Steven's ex-wife, which might explain why you want to just keep abusing her. And also, Dormammu's niece, I think, who is the deity of the Dark Dimension, where she is the Sorcerer Supreme. She's the Sorcerer Supreme of the Dark Dimension. Then we get Iron Fist, as played by Danny Rand, who, as far as I know, has never been the Sorcerer Supreme of any dimension. He's a 4-cost defender with 3 health, 2 attack, and 1 thwart, and he enters play with 2 mystic counters. When he attacks an enemy, remove 1 of the mystic counters to stun that enemy and deal 1 more point of damage. 4 costs to get an ally into play isn't always the easiest thing to do when you have other things you gotta pay for, but if he's gonna then get you 2 stuns, you find a way to get him into play. 3 copies of Desperate Defense is next, a 1-cost defense event. When your hero defends against an attack, it gets +2 to their defense, and if you take no damage, ready your hero. Everybody loves a ready! This gets Doctor Strange's defense up to a 4, which isn't... You're not, like, totally safe from all attacks, but that's still pretty good odds that you're then going to get that ready. And even outside of Doctor Strange, this is an incredible card. You put this into a Captain America deck or something who already has a pretty good defend. Ghost Spider. This card is incredible. It's become a protection staple. It goes well with Flow Like Water, and I love cards that go well with Flow Like Water. Next up is 3 copies of Momentum Shift, a 2-cost attack event. As a hero action, heal 2 damage from your hero to deal 2 damage to an enemy. But do note that arrow here. Healing 2 damage is part of the cost of this one, so if you don't have that 2 damage to heal, you can't use Momentum Shift to then deal 2 damage. But if you do have the 2 damage to heal, this is great. 2 heal is only 1 less than Doctor Strange's recover ability, so that means you don't have to flip down to Alter Ego to get almost the same amount of health back, plus you're doing damage, or you can also use this to clear a stun on you, because it's still an attack. You have to have that 2 damage to be able to heal. The Night Nurse is next. She's a 1-cost persona support with 3 medical counters. Exhaust her to heal 1 damage from a hero and discard a status card. Pretty cool in the right scenario. If you're going to get stunned and confused, this is a great way to get rid of that. Although Doctor Strange can kind of turn those into a tough status, but not everybody can do that. Though it is worth noting that with the Night Nurse, that removing a status card is mandatory. So if the only status card on you is a tough, you probably don't want to use this. Then we get 3 copies of Unflappable, a 1-cost condition upgrade, max 1 per player. After you defend an attack and take no damage, exhaust this to draw a card. This is the one. This is the protection card that makes it so difficult for me to play any other aspect. I love the concept of a deck where you're defending and you're taking no damage, and then when you take no damage, you do a bunch of other stuff. Draw a card, ready, take some threat off. There's a bunch of them out there. I feel like it all linchpins around this one, and I just love this card. 3 copies of Warning is next. It's a basic event that costs 0, love those. When a hero would take any amount of damage, reduce that damage by 1. And I guess they errated this one so that it's not a defense event anymore, it's an anytime event, so you can use this to take 1 damage off of indirect damage, which is really nice because not a lot helps you with indirect damage, but it's also still not a great card. Last up in the pre-constructed deck is, of course, the Sorcerers Supreme, a 2-cost title upgrade that you can only play if you have the Mystic trait. Get +1 to your hand size in hero form. Sure. Yeah. So now he has 6 cards in hand in either form, plus he has an extra wild card on hand and an ability to draw 3 cards. Why did they go so hard on Doctor Strange? Scarlet Witch and Adam Warlock are the only other playable heroes that we have so far that have the Mystic trait, and this should be an auto-include in any deck with either of those characters. This card is amazing. Our aggression card is Skilled Strike. It's a 0-cost interrupt event. When your hero makes a basic attack, it gets +2 to that attack. That's a fun card in the right deck. It's probably not for Doctor Strange, who only naturally has 1, although if you combine that with combat training, it's going to get up to 4, I guess, but in the right hero, this can make for a very strong, just very basic attack. The Justice card is foiled. We get 3 copies of this 0-cost event. When a boost card is turned face up during a scheme activation, cancel the boost icons. Really good for the characters that like spending a lot of time in Alter Ego, particularly Black Widow or Gambit. This is great for them. They can just sit there in Alter Ego, a big scheme comes out, and it's not that big anymore. It's only a little scheme. Last is our leadership card. It's 1 copy of Iron Man, as played by Tony Stark. He's a 4-cost ally with 3 health, 2 attack, and 2 thwart. And you get to reduce the cost to play each upgrade on Iron Man by 1. This means free reinforced suit, free power gloves, free sky cycle. It's inspired. Oh, free inspired. So here's the thing. Doctor Strange is really good. Like, really, really good. Like, he might be so good that he's kind of bad. It's hard to lose a game with this guy, which can be a lot of fun. I mean, cruising through Taskmaster in like 4 turns and just obliterating him is very satisfying. He can get his hand size up to 6 in either form, and he has the ability to draw 3 more cards off of his invocation deck, meaning that he can take and play some prohibitively expensive cards in other players. Aerial, of course, gives him Dive Bomb in aggression. He came with some of what have become absolute staples of the protection aspect. And there's a leadership deck on MarvelCDB.com that has something like 1,300 likes. It should be pretty easy to find. It's amazing. You just dump a bunch of allies into this deck, use 7 rings of Ragator to put tufts on all of them so that no harm can come to Wong. It's very fun. However, there is a very real flip side to never being concerned that you're going to lose the game. It can get, I don't want to say boring necessarily, but maybe frustrating. Maybe you feel like, hey, I spent 20 minutes setting the scenario up and shuffling the cards and making sure everything is just right, and then you win on turn 4. You play for like 10 minutes. So then you set that same scenario up again and win just as easily again. Or then you take another 10, 20 minutes undoing that whole scenario, picking out a new one, setting it up, and then beating that one very easily. And I'm not complaining. I'm not trying to complain that he's too good. I'm just saying I've kind of retired him. I haven't played with Doctor Strange since he came out. I pulled him out again when I was writing this, but it was just as boring. Boring's not the right word. It was a lot of fun. I felt very powerful. I felt like I could take on almost any scenario, and there was never an issue. If you're looking for that, if maybe it's the end of a long day and you just want to kick some ass, Doctor Strange is fantastic. If you are looking for a challenge, it's probably not with him. Anyway, that's going to be all I have for Doctor Strange. We're going to be back soon with Next Evolution, which is the next big box expansion, the campaign expansion, which brings X Factor in, or X Force. I should have written that down. It's going to bring one of them to Marvel Champions, and I'm very excited. Now get off my lawn. The Grouchy Nerd